Okay, let's get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our childbirth knowledge sharing series with the Shades of Motherhood Network and in partner with Providence. We're so glad you're here with us tonight. These sessions are designed to be a safe, supportive space where families can learn, ask questions, and connect with others preparing for birth. Whether you choose to participate in this conversation or simply listen in, you are welcome exactly as you are. Tonight, we're kicking off the series with an important foundation: understanding birth and birth anatomy, as well as the phases of labor. We have our special speaker tonight, Miss Denise. She'll be covering all of this and leading the topic for us. She'll also have interactive key points that she'll be touching on. She'll have lots of demonstrations for us. It's going to be an amazing night. I'm so excited. We also want to highlight resources we're really proud of. Our doula library is one of them. Lakeisha will be sharing more about what's available and how you can use it through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Before we begin, feel free to drop your name in the chat if you'd like and let us know where you're joining from. If you have any questions throughout the session, you can place them in the chat at any time. We'll make sure they get addressed as we go or during our discussion time at the end. Thank you again for joining us, and let's get started. Lakeisha, if you want to share about the doula library, you can unmute yourself now.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Lakeisha. Thank you for being here. I am just super excited to share with you guys what exactly the doula library is. We are here with the Shades of Motherhood to help uplift and support our communities. What is it? A lot of people ask, what does the doula library have? How do we use it? What do we have to offer? The doula library is welcoming community-centered resource hub that provides essential items for mothers, babies, and families. We have diapers, baby hygiene, essentials, lactation supplies, educational books, wellness boxes, and maternity clothes. We are here to meet the needs of our community and to help give them what we need at an easier source. Our sole purpose and value of the program is to reflect framework, speak, observe, understand, and lead. We are providing items that are a collective of things. We have baby bouncers, diapers, wipes. We have nipple pads. The resources just go on. The impact that we have for the community is that family consistency to share a deep support that has touched other lives. The doula library is an unexpected blessing that offers vulnerable time to mothers and families and babies. Not only do we have resources, we also have space. So if you're ever at the downtown mall, we have a space called Diverse Roots where we offer like a mother and me space where if you needed to like do yoga or you needed to do office work, we have a space that you are able to use that and still feed your baby be present. What do we need to help make this program keep going on is that we need people to just show up for your community, donate, show up by the smallest things, by just being there. If you come and make your presence known and make your voice heard, then that's the best way to show up. So please do come to our doula library, which is at the Northtown Mall at our health and wellness district. We're located right by Torrid or Famous Footwear in Northtown Mall. We have 3 locations. We have Diverse Roots, Common Grounds, and Sacred Grounds. So just be on the lookout for all of our things to come. And with that being said, I would like to introduce our speaking lady of the hour, Miss Denise. So, Miss Denise, take it away.
Miss Denise, not sure if you heard Lakeisha, but you are welcome to start now. I have clicked to unmute. There we go. Thank you.
Hi, Miss Denise. You're good to
Hello.
speak. This is she, the queen. You're free to speak.
Okay, I was speaking away, but I guess because my I was already sharing my screen, it wouldn't let me um come off of mute. I couldn't get back to the screen. So, can everyone hear and see me?
Perfect. You sound great and you look great. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay. I'm going to start sharing my screen and tell me when you can see me. My presentation. Can you see that really good?
Perfect.
All righty, so here we go. I'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening. My name is Denise Silas. I am a full spectrum doula, partnered with the Shades of Motherhood Network here in Spokane. And I am just so happy to share with you this evening labor and birth anatomy and the phases of labor. Labor is your body's natural process of moving your baby down and out through the birth canal and vagina. Let's elaborate on what all the labor process involves. It involves the uterus contracting, the cervix opening, and the pelvis guiding the baby through. I also want to add that this is the order that these processes take. And it can take quite a while because most of the pregnancy, your body was focusing on keeping the baby in the womb, in the uterus. So it really has to change to the birthing mode. And so we can have things like false labor, quote unquote, but that's not really, there's nothing false about that labor. You know, contractions can start and stop. They're not contractions that's really going to bring the baby. And this is happening because the process of labor and delivery can even take several weeks. One of the first parts of the anatomy that's involved in bringing our babies forth is the uterus. The pregnant uterus, it grows from the size of maybe a small pear to the size of a large watermelon. The uterus is a very strong muscle. It also is made of mostly soft tissue. And so it is able to, grow tremendously. Another part of the anatomy of birth that is very important is the cervix. The cervix is at the end of the uterus, and those contractions are doing very important work. With each contraction, the cervix is getting softer, it's getting shorter, and it's opening. Many people may be oh, used to the term dilation, and that is the opening of the cervix. I wanted to show an example of how our cervix goes from 1 centimeter to 10 centimeters because not many moms know what that looks like. They might hear it, but seeing it is a different story. Can everyone see this wheel that I have? I hope so.
Yes, we can.
Okay. And so at the top here, we see a number 1. That's what 1 centimeter looks like. And a lot of the times, if someone is checked and, their provider will go in and say, oh, you're not even a finger deep yet, or you're barely 1 centimeter because you can't even get that finger in there. But as we have more contractions, then we see what the cervix is looking like at 2 centimeters. There we have it, 2 centimeters, and it grows. And each one of these stages can take quite a while, even weeks. I've known people to be at 3 centimeters for days. I remember we had an experience one time. It was the first time mom. She went in, got checked because she had been having a little bit of contractions, and they said, "You're 3 centimeters." And she called off her baby shower, but she ended up being 3 centimeters for about 3 weeks, and her baby came at its due date. So, it really takes a while. On this wheel, it looks simple to go from 3 to 4 and on and on. It makes a big difference. And the body does this wisely and well, and it takes its time until eventually, by 10 centimeters, we can have the baby really bearing down and not very far from being born. So this is what each centimeter looks like. I'm going to go back to share my screen. But before I do that, I'd like to ask, has anyone here had the experience of false labor, quote unquote? It's really not false labor, because there's nothing false about it. It's very, very real. But has anyone had the experience of maybe they have contractions? It could be a few weeks before their due date, even 37 weeks, 38 weeks to start happening, or sooner. And then it goes away. To the hospital to, check or maybe mention it at their next appointment and say, boy, last night I was really having contractions or cramping. And then they get checked and their provider says, well, your cervix is still closed. And someone might feel discouraged and think, oh boy, I guess that was false labor. Or the doctor might even say, no, that was false labor. Or go back home, that's false labor. What's going on is prerequisite stuff. That's what I like to call it. It's really called prodromal labor, which is contractions, real contractions that are not really opening the cervix, but they have a purpose and they are doing something. They're preparing your muscles, they're preparing ligaments, they're helping you to know what's really to come, So, has anyone here experienced any type of false labor before? Yes, prodromal. Yes, prodromal labor feels like real contractions because it is. It is the same exact contractions, which is that uterus. And the reason why contractions open the cervix is because it starts from the bottom and it pulls up and contracts there. So it's pushing down. It's like, it goes like this, the contractions, gets up there and presses down. And so the bottom of the womb, where the cervix is relaxing, and that pressure is coming all up there. And that's where the contraction is, bringing the baby down. Okay, I see a question in here that asks, what helps? What helps with prodromal labor, if that's the question? What can help is resting. That's not the time to be, getting active, walking, really trying to get these contractions coming. No, especially if it's a few weeks before the due date, what will help is for the mom to eat some good, nourishing food. I love soups. If it's fruit season, if it's hot outside, hey, watermelon, hydration, warm tub baths, and relax. Lots of times we get pretty anxious coming on to that 38 weeks of pregnancy. And so, because we're just tired of being pregnant, the baby's hanging out on the bladder. You can't do anything. But that's not the time to really get things going. It's time to rest and relax until we really get into real labor. I'm going to share my screen again because after the cervix, we're going to talk about the next part, which is the pelvis. And so the pelvis is very important. And in this picture, we see in the middle here how the pelvis is shaped. And that baby has to go in the inlet and come down and out of the outlet. I have a pelvis to show us. Hold on, I don't want to go there yet. So if everyone can see my pelvis here, this is exactly how the pelvis is shaped. This is the top of the hips, and this is that hard, bony part down there. And the pelvis actually, the female pelvis is actually able to, if you can see that, it moves ever so slightly. Are you able to see that? And so, contractions and movement during active labor will help that baby to get in this area, engaged. It will open at the inlet where to let that baby in, and then when this is how it opens to let the baby in. And then when it's time to let the baby out, this is where hip squeezes come in and things of that nature. And I'm turning this upside down so you could see that the bottom part of the pelvis opens. So to get the baby fully engaged and all, the inlet opens. I really hope you can see that. And then baby goes down, down, and comes out at the outlet, crowning. So the pelvis is very important during pregnancy. We want to practice good posture, regular movement, again, hydration, everything that will keep this pelvis nice and flexible. And during labor, we will have different movements to help that baby get into a good position. So the pelvis is a very important part of the labor and delivery anatomy. I also want to mention the coccyx tailbone. You know, that moves as well, so slightly to let the baby out. But this coccyx bone hurt, you know, in many cultures. I know in my culture, I'm from Belize, Central America. As soon as we turn into teenagers, I don't even know if they realize why, but they start making sure the girls do not play the same way the boys do. They say, you have to protect your tailbone. You have to protect your tailbone, you know, but it is for that reason. It is specifically for labor and delivery. And I'm seeing things in the comments. If anyone wants to, or maybe I can read what's going on in the comment section. Okay, let's start at the top. Oh, I see a labor and birth book that everyone can download. Okay, and I see here, the uterus is a powerful, smooth muscle about the size of a pear before pregnancy. Yes, and it stretches to hold the baby, placenta, and fluids. That is exactly correct. Thank you. And we just have notes in here, the contractions. What are contractions? That's the uterus tightening and relaxing in a coordinated pattern. And it definitely feels like a wave. Contractions start, there's definitely a starting point, and then it builds up, it climbs, it hits a peak, and then it starts relaxing. That womb starts relaxing again. And early contractions may feel very crampy and irregular, but as active labor goes on, it's stronger and closer together. Yes, we spoke about dilation. Let's see. Okay, so in the chat, we just have what helps the prodromal labor again is warm baths, rest, hydration. Exactly. There's a question here. What problems could a mother have with the pelvis during pregnancy? Posture. I have seen, now there's pelvic floor pain. That's not the same as having a problem with the pelvis, with this bony structure. But at the pelvis floor, there can be, during pregnancy, lots of discomfort because this pelvis floor holds, again, it's holding the uterus. It's also holding the bladder, lots of pressure on that pelvic floor. And so it's very important that if a mother is having pelvic floor pain, that she does a few things. Come off of her feet, because even sitting, just sitting, some think, well, I'll just sit and have my feet up, but that's still putting pressure on the pelvic floor. She needs to actually lay down and rest, put her feet up. Now, sometimes that doesn't solve the problem. She may have to do pelvic floor exercises. She may have to do pelvic floor therapies. So it's important to, a lot of times the pelvic floor problems are due to just doing too much. Some mothers will tell me, I didn't experience this the first time, but the second time they're experiencing it because they give the pelvic floor more work. It has to carry everything in that abdominal cavity, along with probably the 2-year-old baby on the hip or the 3-year-old, and so she will run into trouble in subsequent pregnancies. Let's get back to the slides and see what we have next. Okay, this was a video. Okay, that was the pelvic floor. Another very important part of the anatomy of birth is the vagina. Now, the vagina is able to stretch. Very important to have good hydration during pregnancy and even during labor, if possible. Sometimes warm tub baths could be very comfortable for labor. Some, not everyone loves getting down in the bathtub, and not everyone can. Bathtubs are different in size and everything. So showers can be helpful as well. Just hydration to help that skin to stretch. It's just like in the winter, if we're well hydrated, then we're fine. But if not, our lips will be chapped and easier to crack. So we have to keep that in mind. Hydration is just going to be wonderful all throughout labor, pregnancy, delivery, every step of the way. The vagina is a very flexible passage. The baby moves through the vagina for birth. But the vagina is not just passive during active labor. It's a dynamic part of the birth process. It's an elastic muscular design. It helps it to stretch considerably to accommodate that baby. It works together with the cervix and the pelvis, and at the vagina, that's kind of where the birth process ends. It brings the baby safely to the outside. It's connective tissue, and it stretches in response to the baby's descent. Control stretching. I'm going to actually show a video. Let me see. Before I get to that, I can show this. We see crowning and very controlled stretching is what we like. The vagina offers gentle resistance as the baby descends and rotates. Let me ask, has anyone here ever witnessed a vaginal birth? Or even if they have, they might have been present at a birth. But sometimes being present at a birth doesn't mean that you witnessed the actual birth of the baby. So, and I know many moms have never seen the birth of a baby. I am going to show a video, and I just want to ask if there's anyone that has ever witnessed the birth of a baby. If not, we can just continue. I'm going to play this video. I'm not sure how the sound is, but what you're going to see is very controlled descent. The baby is coming down slowly, and it doesn't just come out as soon as you see the head. There's breaks between. The contractions may back off and help that vagina to be able to get ready to do its work again. So let's watch this video.
Denise, I just want to say that we have a comment in the chat that somebody has seen a birth, and I too have witnessed a real birth.
Okay, that is excellent.
I'm excited to see this, though. Thank you for sharing.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Are you able to hear?
The baby's head showing at the opening of the vagina. The birth will happen
soon. If not, I can just describe what we are seeing here.
Be ready to guide the woman.
Okay. It's very quiet on my end. I'm not sure about the
baby
other
out too
viewers.
quickly, resulting in.
Okay, I'll mute it and describe what's going on. What we saw just a moment ago was the provider instructing the mom to just breathe calmly, short pants. And we're going to see, it's going to show a few. This is what I was saying, right? We're not just going to push forcefully. We're breathing, right? And here you see, this is exactly how it is. And the vagina is doing a lot of work here. That tissue is stretching. Then the body relaxes again. That contraction backs off, where all of the connective tissue and everything could regain some momentum. And the provider is providing gentle pressure and support. And this is exactly how the baby emerges, slowly, very, very controlled here. And this is a very important part, how she's breathing. And there's a lot of sensory feedback. There's contraction. Um, some women may describe the ring of fire, and there's a lot of sensory feedback. The vagina contains lots of nerve endings. And all of that works together with the instinct of the mother to push. It does get to a certain part that, she cannot resist the urge to push. But when that happens, it is because all of this prerequisite work has been done by the vagina. And sometimes, even if someone has a light epidural or a walking epidural, they still are able to feel this sensation of pushing. And that's very helpful. And one thing that's very important to know is that after the birth, the vaginal muscles, they gradually contract back toward their pre-pregnancy tone, supported by exercise and pelvic floor strengthening like Kegels. As a matter of fact, Kegels can be done even during a pregnancy. Now, this was just a little umbilical cord. If we can look at that cord was very robust. We'll see that. So they're going to bring the baby. They're not going to bring the cord over his head. They're going to bring the baby out and bring the cord down around his body. But I want us to notice how thick the umbilical cord is. That is great. The umbilical cord is what's providing oxygen to this baby at this time. Okay. Absolutely amazing. And I happen to know this story. There was no tearing. There was no tearing. So what we see here is what is being checked off is that she was breathing correctly, like the panting. The second thing that's being checked off is the support. First, she was adding a little pressure and then the support of that vaginal tissue. So that is okay. So, any questions or comments about what we just saw there? And I will ask again now, has anyone ever saw a live birth that close up? Yes, I do see a comment here that says our bodies know exactly what to do. That is so correct. Do I see a hand raised as well? I will invite you to just unmute your mic.
Hello, hello, Miss Denise. This is a great class. Thank you so much for bringing this knowledge to us. I had the privilege of seeing my first birth just recently, and absolutely amazing experience. By the time I got there, she had the baby within 5 minutes, but it was very controlled. There was a midwife there. along with 3 midwife trainees. And it was a slow, controlled descent. She was on all fours. And it wasn't chaotic. Again, it was very controlled, like you mentioned. And the cord was not around the baby's neck or anything. It was, I guess, just right where it should be. And I like how you use the term robust in reference to the umbilical cord because hers was very robust as well. And it was just amazing opportunity to get to see a baby born. I've had 5 children myself, which is not the same as actually watching someone else have their child. So yes, it definitely is an amazing experience. And I think for me, seeing it in a controlled situation versus kind of sometimes what you might see on the internet, kind of things that are maybe not so controlled or maybe over dramatized per se, if it's in a movie, it definitely brought some reality to childbirth for me. So thank you so much for allowing me to share.
Thank you and congratulations on attending that birth. That was super exciting, I'm sure. Um, and I just want to ask, what are our feelings looking at something like that? Could it be scary? Um, Exciting? There's lots of different emotions um that's felt here. Or like Leola said, it was just really yes.
Um, so the feelings I had at the birth was, I think, one of awe and amazement that our bodies know exactly what it needs to do. And that might be different for each person, but ultimately the body is going to provoke you to do what needs to be done. It's going to tell you when you need to push. Even tell you when you need to breathe, even though you might have a doula or a midwife there, you're going to naturally do these things. And so it's just amazing to me to see that even though it might be a scary situation, especially if it's your first child, kind of the unknown, the body's ultimately going to guide you through your birthing experience.
Yes, that is exactly right. You know, like I mentioned, even in the vagina, there's lots of nerves and everything, and there's constant communication between the nerves and the brain. And so inevitably your body does know what to do and to help get that baby here. Okay, let's move on to our next slide. I believe we will be looking at the placenta. And let's see. Okay. Um, yes, we are looking at the placenta, a very, very important part of the birth anatomy. The placenta has a few jobs. Mostly it it's protection, nourishment, and waste removal. A lot of people don't think of the placenta as being protective, but yes, it is protective as well. Um, Nourishment. The placenta transfers oxygen and nutrients from the mother's body to the baby. The placenta also does waste removal. It takes away carbon dioxide and waste products from the baby's blood. Um, it's important to pay close attention to lab results during pregnancy. If elevated bilirubin or liver enzymes, things like that, um, this is a signal to support the body in restoring balance, helping to reduce stress on the liver and to promote a smooth delivery. So I really stressed paying attention to lab results during pregnancy. A lot of times I may see a mother have a little bit of elevated, liver enzymes. And um, that's when I try to give a little education on how to support liver health, even before delivery by encouraging maybe more fresh fruits, more water, anything, because the liver processes all the toxins that come into the body. So anything that will eliminate more stress on the liver so that we may lower the risk of the newborn having jaundice and things like that. So, when it comes to waste removal, we want that to be taking place efficiently. And that's done by this temporary organ here. The the placenta is a temporary organ, but it's a very, very important organ. Um, it also, one of its jobs is protection. The placenta behaves like a living gatekeeper, filtering nutrients and waste between mother and baby while blocking many harmful substances and microbes. Some infections, can cross, and this is why pregnant women should not be dealing with like cat litter, because there are certain parasites that can break that barrier. And pregnant women do not want uncooked meat, in any form, like sushi and stuff like that. There's also things like syphilis and herpes that can cross that barrier and reach the baby. So, you know, even though it is protective, very protective, there are things that can cross that barrier. The placenta attaches to your uterine wall and connected to your body through the umbilical cord. That's how it's connected to the baby. The umbilical cord is more than a physical lifeline. It's the baby's first emotional environment as well. Everything the mother experiences, her calm, her joy, her fears, her stress, all of these create chemical and energetic messages that travel through this placenta. A mother's feelings becomes the baby's first language, shaping how they enter the world. An important fact that I would like to bring out concerning the umbilical cord is the Wharton's jelly. All right, this is a jelly. It's soft and gelatinous. It's a gel-like connective tissue that fills the space around the three umbilical cord vessels. So it's in there. It's inside of that umbilical cord, and that's what makes that umbilical cord nice and thick and robust. Now, this umbilical cord, and I mean the way this placenta is and everything, and it's also nice and clean and all this kind of stuff. It could be 40 minutes old or so. So this umbilical cord has already, started shrinking down. So when the baby was still attached to this cord, it had, much more oxygen flowing through it, blood and everything. So the cord that we saw in that video, that was a very robust umbilical cord. The main component is water, and that gives this a cushion and protective ability. You know, this right here that we're looking at in this slide, this is a thinner, less plump, less hydrated Wharton's jelly because, the baby doesn't need it anymore. This was just temporary. But this can make the umbilical cord, vulnerable and compressed, especially during labor if the cord is wrapped around the baby. But in that video, we saw that the cord was kind of wrapped around baby. It didn't pose a problem because it was very robust. It wasn't compressed at all. And so even though the baby, it looked like the baby was being choked, all the oxygen was still being supplied to the baby's brain and everything through that robust umbilical cord. And like I said, the main component of the Wharton's jelly is water. This jelly, the purpose of this jelly is to prevent the cord from, compression and to protect against knots and pressure, even when the cord bends and loops. Another important fact about this umbilical cord is that it contains important stem cells, which play a role in the repair and regeneration of tissues as the baby develops. Once the baby is born, the placenta is no longer needed. So it separates from the uterus and is delivered as the afterbirth. One thing that's extremely important to note is how this placenta looks. It looks complete, nice and full. You can see that all of the parts of it are there. If ever there is a situation that the umbilical cord may be tugged on and any part of it tears and remains, it can be a big problem. And I know that every hospital here in Spokane, they will allow the mom, the partner to look at the placenta. And so even as a birthing person, you want to be sure that it looks complete, just like this. Because if any part remains, it can be life-threatening. And so this again is the placenta attached to the baby. And now I'm going to talk about hormones, because hormones is a great part of the anatomy of labor and delivery. We know oxytocin, the love hormone, endorphins, that's a natural pain relief. And then we have cortisol and adrenaline. These are stress hormones. Now, labor is not just physical, it's deeply hormonal. Your body releases a powerful mixture of these hormones and to guide this labor process. It influences how labor feels and even affects how you and your baby connect after delivery. Okay. Oxytocin, again, the nickname for oxytocin is the love hormone. It has many roles in pregnancy, labor, and delivery, and even postpartum. The mother releases oxytocin, which flows through the placenta, helping to influence emotional bonding and feelings of calmness. Another job of oxytocin during labor is to help labor progress by making contractions stronger and more effective. So, during pregnancy and even labor, we want to do things that can promote that oxytocin, that love hormone, to being released in a good fairly high doses. Things like being reassured. Some people may like touch, being massaged during labor, feet rubbed. Whatever could help release oxytocin will help that labor to continue nice and strong and not stall and things like that. Now, we also have endorphins, and endorphins is natural pain relief. And this is why contractions feel like a wave, because it starts, it's strong, it builds, it peaks, and then those endorphins kick in. And there's actually natural pain relief. You can breathe through it. The contractions back off. And so we love that natural painkiller. They rise as the contractions intensify, helping you to cope with pain. And like I said, this is the break between contractions. It's very important to note here that dehydration can significantly affect the hormones during labor and may influence how the body progresses through the birthing process. And dehydration increases the stress hormones that we're going to talk about next. So, to prevent that dehydration, even during labor, you want to continue to drink, whether it's water, coconut water, an electrolyte drink, anything like that. Sleep deprivation also will affect the hormones and their ability to work optimally. And so this is why early labor, prodromal labor, we are resting. A lot of times, everybody gets really excited, like, yay, it's finally happening. And they may even be too excited to sleep and to rest, but it is really, really, really important. I can't stress enough how important it is, because it's called labor for a reason. You will be working to get your baby here. I mean, even if you get pain relief, IV pain relief, even if you get an epidural, like, it's still work. And so we want to keep that in mind, and, to help those hormones to work optimally, we want to be well rested and well hydrated. Again, dehydration triggers the fight or flight response, releasing adrenaline and cortisol. These can delay cervical dilation and increase fatigue. Therefore, you want to continue to drink, like I said, small amounts of room temperature water throughout your labor. Again, coconut water is very helpful in replenishing fluid loss from sweating, rapid breathing. You're getting a lot of fluid loss in labor. You might be having, fluid leaking, different things. Herbal teas, such as raspberry leaf tea, chamomile tea. You might want hydrating snacks, such as watermelon, grapes, whatever you like, cucumbers, frozen popsicles. All of these things could help prevent dehydration during labor. So now I want to talk about how contractions work. Contractions are the driving force of labor. They're powerful waves of tightening and releasing in the uterus that help your body move, that helps your baby move down and your cervix open. They can be intense. They're also powerful. Every contraction brings you closer to meeting your baby. All right. Contractions have a few jobs. One of the jobs is to soften the cervix. And here we see pictures of, what early labor may look like. A little bit of, discomfort, but those contractions, I'm glad that it starts off mild and builds up, because just like we saw in the actual birth of the baby, the slower and more controlled, then everything gets prepared nicely. Because like I mentioned earlier, the whole pregnancy, really, the body was working on growing this new individual, protecting him, and keeping him in the womb. So now, of course, bringing your baby into the world is a whole different mode that the body has to switch to. So this is early labor. Contractions here are usually mild, maybe lasting 30 seconds. They may be spaced out as far as 5 to 20 minutes. The cervix may be dilated anywhere from 0 to 6 centimeters and begins to thin or efface. This may feel like period cramps, backaches, tightening in the belly. At this time, like I said, it's important to rest, hydrate, eat light foods. Um, and also, maybe you may use some comfort measures at home. And this stage can take hours to even days, especially with a first baby. So you see, these are pictures depicting they're at home, just that first mama looks like praying or just rocking, just getting the baby into a good position. This is the stage that the exercise ball, that big ball, may be very helpful to do some rocking and swaying of the hips.
Miss Denise,
Uh-huh.
we have a question in the chat. It says, so birthing people that are stressed will have a harder labor. Is that true?
Oh, yes, yes. They definitely do tend to have stalled labors. They definitely do tend to have more adrenaline and cortisol flowing through their body more than your oxytocin, which is your love hormone. So, a lot of times, if we can deal with the stress and the stressors before labor, it's very important to get involved with peer support groups. Talk to someone. Let's try to have healthy coping mechanisms for stressors, because pregnant person really needs to be stress free as can be. She doesn't have to be perfectly happy and laughing and jumping up and down with joy all the time. But as we have mentioned before in an earlier slide, that's the baby's first language. Every single thing that mother is feeling is actually moving through that placenta, and that's the baby's first language. So definitely, if a mom is feeling stressed during pregnancy, we want to take, help with that, find some resources before we even get into labor. But in labor, if a mom is stressed or anxious because of the labor, there's definitely comfort measures, massages, soft music, reassurance, words of affirmations, things like that, to reduce that stress level and boost the oxytocin. Mm-hmm. Um, does that answer it? Now we can go into more active labor. Active labor, contractions are stronger and more regular and lasting a little longer here, anywhere from 45 to 60 seconds, and they may be 3 to 5 minutes apart. The cervix may dilate from 6 to 8 centimeters. At this point, contractions definitely require more focus, coping techniques. Talking and walking through contractions at this point may become more difficult. It may be helpful here to change positions, again, shower, get in a bath. Even at most hospitals, if the baby is doing good and doesn't require constant fetal heart monitoring, mothers can get in the shower, at the hospital, in the bath. Breathing techniques and massages are very helpful. This may be the time that an epidural is chosen. Um, if a mom is going to remain at home, This is definitely the time that the midwife would be called. And we see here that even at anywhere, cold towels, and this alone, all of this interaction, all this community support here, whether it's family, doula, just your support team, this alone will just increase the oxytocin. Now, once we get to this stage, we have passed active labor, and this is actually transition. The transition phase of contractions is very intense. Contractions here could last over a minute, 90 seconds, and they may be coming every 2 to 3 minutes. At this point, the cervix dilates from 8 to 10 centimeters or may be completely dilated. This is often the most overwhelming part. Mothers may feel shaky, nauseous, hot, or cold, or both. This is definitely the point where lots of people may say, I can't do this. At this point, strong support is vital. Reassurance and help in focused breathing is very, very important at this transition part. But this stage is very short compared to the others. It's short but powerful. And at this transition stage is also the pushing stage. Again, here the cervix is fully dilated. Contractions remain strong, but they may space out, giving a brief rest. And that's what we saw in the video. Of course, that was actually, transition labor. She was actually already in the pushing stage. And we saw that baby crowning right there. And then the contraction backs off. And usually it's a big space that the contraction backs off. I've seen mothers fall asleep, between these contractions. There may be a whole 10 minutes. And then that intense contraction starts again. And here is often surprised how long this pushing stage can actually take. Someone may change positions even during pushing. I've experienced this many times because the pushing stage could be anywhere from 20 minutes. I've seen pushing as short as 20 minutes to an hour or more. And that's usually very surprising for someone to experience, because they may hear, okay, you're at 10 centimeters, and they may see the team getting ready. And they may think that means my baby's going to be in my hand in 5 minutes, when that doesn't have to be the situation at all. In that video, that was like in real time. And we see how it is. The baby comes a little, and the video actually showed the actual baby crowning and really getting ready to be here. But even before that stage, the baby may present and retreat, present and retreat, because it's getting all of that soft tissue ready. Pressure is very strong at this point. The urge to push or bear down is very, very strong at this point. But it is very important to work with the body and use different positions if possible. If someone is pushing in one position And hey, it may be more than 20 minutes, maybe more than 40 minutes in that position. They may want to try a different position. And third stage of labor is the baby in your arms, you know, and you have delivered the placenta, and it's just a feeling of relief, absolute relief. Um, so it goes from active labor, which was here, like, I don't know if I can do it. A matter of fact, I mostly hear, I cannot do it. I can't go on. Sharing my own personal story, my first son, I had already worked in labor and delivery. I was a labor and delivery nurse. Um, but my first son was a home birth. And I told my midwife to call Oprah. And she said, "Excuse me? Like, who's Oprah?" And I said, "Oprah Winfrey. Call Oprah. She wants to get this story." I said, "I'm done. I cannot. I will not. I am going to be the first woman pregnant for the rest of my life. I cannot have this baby." That was active labor. But no, the body will do it. And so it did get to this stage. Absolute feelings of relief. And this is when that baby is in your arms, and that placenta has to be delivered safely. And that's when the delivery is really over, after the placenta is delivered, not when, the baby's delivered. Very important next stage, which is that placenta being delivered. And yes, the mom has to push again, but it feels like nothing compared to when, bones was included. The placenta is all soft, much smaller, and is not as bad as, pushing the baby out. Even after that, the womb does continue to contract, because where that placenta was, now that's a hole. And so it's contractions that put pressure on that area and closes off and clamps down on the uterus, and closes off where the placenta was, and it controls that bleeding or stops that bleeding. And I would just like to open up for any questions on any parts of either the anatomy of birth or the phases of the actual labor process that anyone may have. Yes, Leola.
Yes, I'm sorry about the background noise. I am still at work. Um, very interested in the pelvic floor wall. Can you tell me, I mean, I understood what you were saying, but can you break down like the anatomy? I mean, is it muscle, tissue, nerves? And when that pressure is on that pelvic floor wall, is
Mm-hmm.
it is it that the pelvic floor wall is really sensitive, like it's going to give way? Like,
No.
can you kind of help me give me a better understanding? Because I don't
Okay, sure. It's connective tissue. So it's not strong muscle. The uterus is a hollow muscle, and it is super strong. The vagina is also very muscular. The pelvic floor is actually webbed. It's actually webbed, and it's connective tissue. Connective tissue looks just like what it sounds like. So it's not solid, it's not firm, but it is strong, almost like spider web, if we can think of it, or silk, the silkworm. It looks thin, but it's powerful, it's strong, and it's going to do the job. And that's the same with the pelvic floor. how it's going to do the job. However, you better believe there is things called uterine prolapse. There are things called bladder prolapse, which is the pelvic floor was abused so much that it actually protrudes through. And so we see this cultures that the women are carrying buckets, 5-gallon buckets of water, from wherever the well or whatever to their home and things like that. And so it's very important for pregnant women to know that sometimes it seems like we have to do it all, or, well, it has to get done, but they have to consider their body. They have to know that it's just for a time. It's just for this time. Let the dishes go, let the laundry go, or this is the time to call in your support, allow the friends, neighbors, in-laws, whatever, allow them to give that lending hand. This is not the time to show that I can do it all.
I did have one more question. Just your extensive experience. What is the worst case scenario you've seen with a woman's pelvic floor that maybe took your breath away, and maybe what that situation was like, and was it preventable, that type of thing? So what's the worst case scenario in pregnancy with the pelvic floor wall?
I actually experienced two women. One was overseas, and it was that she was carrying 5-gallon buckets of water, which is about 40 pounds on each side. And she was 5 months pregnant. And what it caused was her water to break that pressure, and the umbilical cord came through the pelvic floor and the cervix. And this was in another country, and the people had to run by foot a half a mile to get me, and I come back. So the baby drowned in utero. That was the pelvic floor not able to hold that massive amount of pressure. And I think it was several times a day. And it was a sad situation because that particular family, they asked the brother-in-law to be the one to get the water. And the wife didn't want to seem incapable. She didn't want to seem like a burden. And so she would not allow her brother-in-law. She would not, which he lived close proximity. So, the husband would get some water before he left home, but he said, if you need more water, have my brother. And she would not. So that was very serious. And that's what that was. The pelvic floor could not take that pressure. And the umbilical cord came through. Just because the baby was only 5 months, so the baby's head was not big enough to take up that whole space. So that's why the cord could slip through. And yeah. And I experienced the same in a family in Georgia. A family in Georgia, that baby was saved. That baby was saved. Thank God. I was at church, but this was a quote unquote, superwoman as well. She was, used to having to do everything for herself. And, they called me at church and they said, oh my God, a gush of water, and I see a little bit of umbilical cord. And so I said, hot water towels, face rags, and hot water. Put it there. I said, travel with a tea kettle and take everything to the hospital. So what happened was that baby was well, no damage, no brain damage, anything. what happened was, so the body didn't know the baby was not born. Okay, so because of the water and the temperature and everything on the umbilical cord, which was right there at her vagina, kept it there, and so the placenta never stopped working because, you know, the placenta is just a temporary organ, and what tells the placenta that its job is done is the change in temperature, and hopefully that baby, that baby and that umbilical cord. Oh, now it's in a room of 73 degrees, and so the placenta says, oh, it's the baby's here. I can retire now. But they got her to the hospital, and we were on the phone with the hospital. The ER was ready. Everything was just really perfect because she just had moments, and she was able to go straight into the ER C-section and deliver a healthy, beautiful baby.
Thank you so much. I just put a question in the chat, the last thing. What's the average temperature in a mom's womb?
Okay, 98 degrees, like our body.
Degrees is just
Mhm.
that's what,
Mhm.
and then it hits that air, and then
Right. Mhm.
okay,
And that's
gotcha.
what tells the baby's lungs to start breathing now.
Okay.
And so, if the baby's even if a baby is born and the head is out and the rest of the baby is not born, soon after, that baby can actually choke from the vagina, now to be strangled if that baby starts using its lungs instead of getting air from the umbilical cord. And we'll see that extremely rarely when a baby's shoulders are wider than the head should be the biggest part, and then the rest of it comes out. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
I had a question, Miss Denise. So when it comes to pushing, I heard you say that you could be pushing for an hour or a prolonged period of time and not just like 5 to 10 minutes, like some people might think. Are there ways to speed that up, or is that just the body's natural way, and however long it takes is that time span?
A lot of times that's because of position. Let me see if I can grab my baby. Let me grab my babies. Mhm. I still absolutely love dolls, so they're all dressed and everything. But um sometimes, why is my dog my dog actually loves this pelvis? I'm like, is this real bone? Anyway, sometimes when we are experiencing long pushing, it's because the baby is not in the ideal position. Head down is wonderful, but that's only half the story. We want the baby head down and facing this direction so that it can fit in here correctly. If the baby is head down but side lying, oh my goodness, there's still a lot of work, because the body wants to get him like this to get that baby out. Uh, Sometimes that baby might be a little rascal already and have his hands up by his face. And that's harder to get just that little extra head out than if the hands were somewhere down here. So what is helpful is movement. You know, if there's a doula, someone to help to say, okay, well, let's get side lying. Let's get in a side lying position. So contractions could still bring the baby like this. Let's get in a position that the mom could now be laying on her side on the bed, and actually bring her knees together. If you bring your knees together, the hips will do this, the pelvic bones will do this, and spread your ankles apart. You might want to get on hands and knees. And if you get on hands and knees, gravity will help that baby to go into a different position, or just get the little bit of extra room that it needed to now wiggle and go like this. So usually if I see 20 minutes, 30 minutes and not really, really good progress, I might encourage the mom to move. And a lot of times it might be to move into a position that is the most painful. I have experienced that. The mom might get into a position, and right here, it feels good. But that might not be the best position to get the baby out. So I might have to say, "Ooh, mom, I know this spot was really rough, laying on the left, but it could be because that baby's hung up a little bit. And that's a position we need to get into." And then I see 2 pushes and babies here.
So do you think the positioning before getting to the pushing part plays a
Yeah.
big role in this as well?
Yes. And this is why I love the practice of still using hands, because or even educating the mom on where you're feeling the kicks and stuff like that, because like I said, the baby being head down is not enough. And there can be things that can be done with positioning before active labor begins. So get that baby in a good position. Another thing I like to tell moms how important their posture is. There is no slouching during pregnancy, no leaning to one hip, no favoring one side, and things like that. Because the baby will do that. It'll go to wherever it had the most room and just hang out there. If she's just always, favoring one side or crossing her legs, anything like that, they give the baby just any little extra space to just hang out over here. And that's not what we want. We want to be very balanced, very lined up in everything. And so that this is the position we want the baby. The baby could be, a position like this. So contractions could just bring them here easy, bring them out. And there's other things too, like the rebozo. The rebozo is one of the things. The pelvis is shaped like this. Okay. The baby is, hanging out in the abdomen like this. The rebozo brings that baby up and in, with contractions. And, you know, so that's one of the things that's very helpful. Another thing that's very, very helpful, because it's related to the pelvic floor, is a procedure called just a little jiggle. Just a little jiggle with that mother in labor. I mean, very, very soft jiggle, and that's working on connective tissue. And it might loosen up, the ligaments here, to help that movement to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more easy. So there are things that could be done. Yeah, we definitely don't want a mother worn out and pushing for hours. Mhm. I like to welcome Kelly and just ask if you have any questions. Was any of this scary? Or, and the reason I asked if any of it is scary, because, I have worked with families that have had many children, and they're like, I'll offer, do you want a mirror? You want to see? And they're like, no, I'm scared. No. So it could be intimidating. Any comments, questions at all? Yes, I see a hand.
Yes, me again.
Mhm.
No, I have learned so much in this class today.
Mhm.
I am just, I'm like, I've had 5 kids. I mean, I feel like I've never had a child after hearing some of this information. I'm like, wow,
Mhm.
I really did that 5 times. But just to hear, like, I don't want to say mechanics, but that's the only word I can think of, just the mechanics of labor within itself and how there's just so many small nuances, big nuances that could change the labor into something else. I mean, one thing that hit me is when you said slouching, because I actually have scoliosis, so I'm a natural sloucher. And when you said that, I'm like, oh, let me stand up straight. But I did not realize that your posture, the way you stand, the way you sit, the way you lean, plays into where the baby's going to be, where the baby's going to, like you said, settle in place, and how that could change the dynamics of your labor. And so, amazing information to be able to pass on to mothers that are pregnant, and letting them know about these nuances that could could really have make them have a better outcome in their pregnancies and their labor. So thank you so much. Phenomenal information. Phenomenal.
You are very welcome, and you're exactly right. It can be just small things that can really have a big impact. Mhm. Okay, Kelly says this is great information. Um, oh, you've seen a birth, but was very young. Your aunt let you watch your cousin being born. Not scary, but very aware of the pain. Okay, I am glad that you have experienced a live birth up and personal. Good.
I just love the demonstrations. Like, this has been really good. And I think just for so many people, whether you be a doula or a new parent or a parent, coming back into space, I think it's crucial and it's so important. And you just brought back so many things that need to be reminded. And I'm loving everything that's being shared tonight. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. And I'm so glad that you guys all came out. Glad you enjoyed the information. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Shades of Motherhood is here for you, here for it. We're gonna have some of these classes in person. Looking forward to that. We want to have some childbirth knowledge classes here in Spokane in person, where we can maybe touch some bellies or, um, just interact a little closer. Please fill out the form for the survey after this class. It is in the chat. It will help us greatly. Yes.
Thank you so much, Miss Denise. This was an amazing class and so much knowledge was shared. Like Leola mentioned, like even having birth and being involved in births and everything, I swear like every time I'm a part of one of these sessions, I learn more and more. I think I'm like, oh, I know it all. Like I know all the ins and outs. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Or I have questions about something else. So thank you so much. You're a wealth of knowledge and it's so amazing to hear from you.
Oh, you are very welcome. And yeah, for sure, there's no possible way of us knowing everything because every single birth, even if it's the same person, it's going to be different, you know. Um, so, uh, again, I'm just really glad to be able to share because when I hear things like, I never forget my first son. Um, I had, people came to the house and I had videoed that birth and I was sharing it with everybody, all the women in church, all the neighbors, everybody. And I had someone say, wow, I've never experienced that. I never experienced that. And I said, really? your children look just like you. Um, but what she was saying, she said she never experienced contractions. And she was just scheduled C-section um before her due date, from her first child. And so this was in New York. And I know sometimes it depends on the area and the policies, but that just led down the rabbit hole of everyone had to be a scheduled C-section and everything. And when she saw my labor, she said, wow, it probably could have been done, because I think it was for something like the position of her baby. Her baby was still uh, breech at 37 weeks, or something something like that. And that's why I really love to share, because I just had two moms that uh, were able to not have a C-section because their baby went head down. A family called me all the way from Maryland. Help. They told me to bring my daughter in for a C-section because the baby is breech at 37 weeks. And I said, it's time. You know, I encouraged her to hydrate because the baby makes amniotic fluid. Sometimes it's too low amniotic fluid. That amniotic fluid changes every 3 to 4 hours. So if there's not enough amniotic fluid, it could be like, the baby trying to make a broken U-turn, in a tight space. So add some hydration and everything, that baby will urinate more and make more amniotic fluid and be able to go head down. Along with, I told the grandma and the mom positions to get into, which is just all fours. And what all fours does is just why my dog always think I'm talking to him? Just get that little extra space right there. You can see if you laying down or something, it's like this. But as soon as you get in this position, you got some space. And so extra amniotic fluid, extra space, that baby went head down, and they had a beautiful vaginal birth 2 days before her due date, and that was really good because this young lady I think she's 18 years old. She's beautiful, beautiful relationship. She's married. She has the potential to have many more years of reproduction. So they don't want to have any more children right now, but a first C-section now could easily lead to another C-section. Another thing that sometimes causes the baby to be breech is too much amniotic fluid. And so if it's too much amniotic fluid, now the baby have a lot of space to just be doing all kinds of things. And when we run into too much amniotic fluid, and these are the things that I want doulas and birth workers to keep an ear out for. Like, we don't want to just hear these things and brush them off. If we're hearing your baby has too much amniotic fluid, we might want to do some follow-up, encourage the mom to say, hey, look into baby's kidneys, baby's heart, mother's heart, mother's kidneys. These are things that will cause too much amniotic fluid. Any one of them, heart not functioning optimally, mom or baby, or kidneys. I had a mom in Maryland as well, and too much amniotic fluid. Checked the baby. The baby only had one kidney. So they were prepared, when the baby was born, and different things. Yes, I see a comment here. It says everything in birth means something, no matter how big or small. That's exactly right. Because like I said, I have attended moms. I was with a mom not too long ago, and I see her labs. She was having pain, and we go get some labs done, gallbladder, her liver enzymes, and it's a lot of pain. And so helped her out with simple things. Um, she loves pizza. And I was like, ooh, pizza not loving you, So put away the pizza because she loved it with all the works, the pepperoni and everything, and just that oil and cheese and everything. Usually the body could help, love it, love it. Two slices, three slices, no problem. However, when the body is focused on making another person, it's making another brain, it's making another person. So sometimes it'll slack over here. It'll say, well, I can't focus on all of this grease from this pizza, and then that's when it shows up: gallbladder attack, gallbladder pain, liver pain, So, you see those labs and you see anything raised, the doctor might just say, oh, this is high. That's all they did. That's all they did for her. It was just like, oh, yeah, this is high, and so without really helping to correct that. And so I told her, well, I'm going to want you to lay off of the pizza. I know you love it, but it don't love you. And, or make it homemade, and maybe without the, pepperoni and stuff. And she was in so much pain. She was like, nope, I don't need it at all. And I said it, and add your fresh stuff, if you're going to have whatever, make sure you have a large salad as well, or some extra fruit, whatever you can do. Yeah. And her numbers are wonderful. And we're expecting, that her and baby won't have any problems when we get closer to labor. And hopefully this baby won't have any jaundice. Mm-hmm. Mhm. So amazing, amazing.
Thank you, Miss Denise. This was amazing.
You are welcome.
Again, just after you speaking again, I was like, there was more things that I just learned. Like I
Mhm.
said, like seriously, a wealth of knowledge. You have so much knowledge. It's so wonderful to hear from you.
Oh. I learned from a lot of wonderful people. You would be amazed how much things I learned from my mother-in-law. We just lost her last year at 102 years old. Um, she was the one that, she really stressed taking care of that pelvic floor during pregnancy. My first baby, my mother-in-law was in her upper 70s. I think she was 78 years old or so. And I was young. And so everything, bringing the groceries in and out. I mean, just everything. I had so much energy as well. And she would say, young lady, if you don't put that down and if you don't go take a nap and this and that. And I'd say, I'm good. No, I'm good. And she said, you're making a person. And she said to me one day, these young people get on my nerves. She said, let me tell you something. If you don't take care of yourself during the reproductive years, I promise you that you will not be able to do at 40 what I could have done at 75. And I listened. I was like, okay, and she was 100% right. And then after the baby as well. I mean, this woman, oh my goodness, she had me taking a nap every day. I'm like, are you kidding me? But yeah, there's a reason for it. And I definitely saw the difference because my second baby, we had moved out the state and I didn't have her. And the recovery, postpartum, I started bleeding again. And it was a lot more difficult. than, when I was listening to the wise one.
That's so amazing. And 102 years old is incredible. Oh my goodness.
She lived alone. She still had her full mind. She lived on the
Wow.
third floor. Yeah,
That's amazing.
she was wonderful.
I'm so sorry for your loss, but it sounds like
Yeah.
she had a lovely life, a powerful one.
Oh, yes. Mhm. Yes. And I kind of, have made it, I pledge in my heart to really pass on the things that she taught me about reproduction and the taking care of the woman's body. She's my husband's mom, and she said she would laugh and she would say, "Dr. Silas, I've been doing the things that you teach people since I was 10 years old." Because she was the youngest sister, so she would take care of the older sisters and neighbors postpartum. Oh my goodness, you teaching people about this hydrotherapy. It needs water baths. I've been doing that since I was 10 years old. And so I kind of pledged in my heart that I wouldn't let it be forgotten, the wonderful things that she have taught. Um, yeah, it's about herbs and simple things.
That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
It's amazing.
And if we are ready to wrap up, I guess.
Yes, I want to give a huge thank you to you, Miss Denise.
Yes, I want to ask if everyone did fill out that form, that survey.
I'll post it again too in the chat just so that it's right there at the bottom. And then I will also be sending it in a follow-up email. So you'll receive a follow-up email with a summary of tonight's discussion and any links or resources mentioned. If you signed in, you'll also get reminders before each coming session this week. And also ongoing sessions that will be happening in the future. And like Miss Denise mentioned, we will be starting to have some in-person classes. So be on the lookout for those. Feel free to join as many sessions as you'd like. They're all completely free and open to families at any stage. So feel free to share them with friends, family members, other expecting families that you know of. And if you have any additional questions or something comes up after we log off, you can always reply to the follow-up email or reach out to the Shades of Motherhood Network directly. I want to thank you for being here and have a wonderful evening. We look forward to seeing you at the next session. And thank you again, Miss Denise, and thank you, Lakeisha, for going over the doula library.
Thank you, Miss
You
Denise.
are amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Everybody have a great night.